government being for the common good, which is something that we have also lost recently. The conditions of a satisfactory life for all, and with that, in some ways, our country has suffered, and I think many here, in the prevailing attitude that we've had recently, have suffered because we haven't picked up that sort of sentiment for the common good and worked with it.
But if you read these words that you were just quoting, it says endeavor to. It doesn't mean they're going to guarantee it.
That's true. Endeavor
to establish the conditions of a satisfactory life. So they're not saying we should guarantee everyone a satisfactory life, just as our Constitution, which says that provides for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The pursuit, they do not guarantee the happiness.
Right.
And so you're saying that there should be efforts to assist the less fortunate.
Yes.
But not necessarily an enforcement of such efforts.
Right.
All right. Well, where would you like to go from there? All right, I'm looking at the Second Manifesto, which was 40 years after the first one, and it says, while there is much that we do not know, humans are responsible for what we are or will become. No deity will save us; we must save ourselves. Promises of immortal salvation or fear of eternal damnation are both illusory and harmful. That sounds pretty much humanistic and atheistic to me. Any other comments on that?
One of the initial threads that worked into the first document, and it continues through to this, is a sentiment of finding the basis of humanism very early in our culture. And that it's quite easily read in Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism if one turns to the East. But in the West, it primarily comes out of the Greek thought, and in Pythagoras and Anaxagoras were very concerned as thinkers 500 to 600 before the Common Era of the religious thoughts of that time. I think that thread follows right through into this.
As I recall, you are a student of Eastern religions, am I correct?
Yes.
And
more so than West.
And how would you say that humanism is related to or a part of some of the Eastern religions?
Well, you begin with the stories. So many of their stories have to deal with natural elements, the climbing the mountain, the long journey. These sorts of threads are completely in presence. The arguments between people, the animals that carry certain kind of sentiments and moods with them, these are natural stories, and from that are derived the lessons of life.
All right. Comments on that?
Just from my knowledge of Buddhism, one of the important things is the idea of not harming other people, even if they deserve it. I'm reminded of the story of when the British invaded Tibet, and they marched in, and the Tibetans had gotten together some old firearms, and they had, set up a barricade in the middle of Lhasa, and the British Army is marching up, and they're expecting to have some kind of firefight with these very poorly armed Buddhists. But what happened was, when it was obvious that the British weren't going to stop, the Buddhists just kind of dropped their guns and got up and went home. They were willing to try to stop them, but not if it meant hurting anybody.
We're getting close to the end of our time, but let me just read also from the Manifesto number 2, where they said, We believe in maximum individual autonomy consonant with social responsibility. And they further say the right to birth control, abortion, and divorce should be recognized. Neither do we wish to prohibit by law or social sanction sexual behavior between consulting adults. So here they're getting down to some specifics. And this was in 1973. And here we are, and many years later, still facing these problems in our society. Where will all of this end?
I'm reminded of the story that in spiritual journeys there is never a graduation. In other words, we never reach the end of the line, and I think with this too. We are in progress. We moved through the 60s into the 70s, and now we're some 30 years later, and there is a continuing movement in our society, I think, toward, I would hope, more justice and greater equity and personal freedom.
And when you did say personal freedom, but would you say that would include these specific things which I read to you, having to do with abortion, divorce, sexual behavior?
Should one ask me of my opinion? Yes.
All right. Well, further on in their document, we're almost to the end of our time, but it says that we have to include freedom of speech and the press, political democracy, the legal right of opposition to governmental policies, fair judicial process, religious liberty, freedom of association, and artistic, scientific, and cultural freedom, and the right to die with dignity, euthanasia, and the right to suicide. Have they gone too far?
Oh, except for the last one. They've just rewritten the Bill of Rights, so no, they haven't.
Well, you have
other
a
than the
problem.
right to die, which is not in the Bill of Rights, all the rest of those are protected in our Constitution.
Well, we in the past have had on this program representatives of an organization which favors the right for a person, especially if he's in the final stages of a fatal disease, to decide for himself that he's ready to go. And there's one state in this country where physician-assisted dying is legal, and the rest of the states have been unable to do it. Is there anything immoral about that? Does anyone here know anything about morals?
Well, can you think of a more personal decision?
No.
I certainly can't. And therefore, one that the government has the least right to interfere in.
You know, we all have the right to life, and I take that in a different way than many people use it. But that includes the right to die, which will certainly come for all of us.
Well, I want to thank all of you for being with us today, Michael, Dennis, and particularly you, Reverend Vanderweel. I think it's been a very interesting show, and I suspect that the country would be better off if more people knew about and understood this manifesto. I want to thank all you folks for watching our show, and hope you will be with us again in the future.